upon Mr. Louis LaRose to say a prayer for us.
Tasty.
Hi, Louis. Would you please say a prayer for us? Okay. Well, I'm just gonna assume that he offered that. Okay, we might be having some audio issues with Louis, but I'm thinking that he's offering this prayer for us as I've asked.
He has the sound on.
Okay, we can hear you now, Louis. Yeah, we can hear you now. Would you like to offer up that prayer? It's in and out. They're working on it. We had sound issues earlier too.
The regular was kind of like a cartoon. Last week.
Okay.
We had the presenter, we had to take the computer over there.
Louis, if you don't mind, since they're getting things figured out for you, ask Coley to say a prayer for us. Coley, will you say a prayer for us?
Yes, thank you. Heavenly Father, our Creator and our Savior, our Mama, I come to you today very thankful. I'm thankful for this day that you've given us. I'm thankful for the prayers and blessings that are given and answered to us. Heavenly Father, I said you continue with the good health and healing and good directions, love and compassion and courage to walk Mother Earth that you've given us. Heavenly Father, I ask for a special prayer for our children. Children today that may be in a hospital, that may be going in the wrong direction today, and always we have our own. And I'm sorry for being that way, praying for our own, but I ask that from you and Heavenly Father. Prayer and special prayer for our elders. Our children are our future. And the elders are our knowledge of life that teach us and help us and guide us just like you. So Heavenly Father, again, thank you for this beautiful day that you've given to us, and I look forward to tomorrow given by you. Thank you. Amen.
Thank you, Coley. Okay, are we good with Louis?
Can Louis hear now? Or can we speak?
Okay. So Louis did mute himself, but in the meantime, they're gonna figure out his audio because we know that Louis can hear us. Okay. So at this time, well, if he wants to vote no on something, okay, we can hear you. I heard you just now. Whatever you guys did, we fixed it. Okay. Is it just that, Louis, we can hear you, but there's like this mic ringing noise that's coming on our end.
How come I can't hear it?
I can hear that noise too.
You can hear it, Brian? Okay, they can hear it on their end too. Okay, the ringing stopped. Can you guys still hear us? Oh, it's back. Okay, So we're gonna move forward in the best way that we can under these audio
Yeah.
hardships. And thank you to our IT guys for standing by working on those. So we have call to order at 5:07 a.m. Thank you, Coley, for that prayer. We have an agenda that's been prepared. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Any additions?
Do you have an addition?
HR issues.
We added the HR issues.
Okay.
Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion by Eric. We have a second. Second by Rona. Discussion. Objection. Motion carried 7-0-0. First order of business is to approve the minutes. The first set is August 11th, 2022, regular tribal council meeting minutes. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion by Eric. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Coley. Discussion. Objection. Motion carried 7-0-0. The second set of minutes is the August 11th, 2022 land meeting enrollment update and physical resources report. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Coley. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Eric. Discussion. Objection. Motion carried 7-0-0.
Madam Chair, there's one typographical error on the last set. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you. So the enrollment, is it the last page you said?
Hello?
Yep, we can hear you. On which page? The second page of the second set? Is that what you said? We can hear you, Brian. Where did you say? Oh shoot. Okay. One moment. I start signing. Just give it.
Hey, Brandon. This is Gary. So I'm on my phone. We're having some issues. I can hear that it's in the chambers, but I don't think I can hear Tori.
Test.
How about me? Louis.
Louis. And I can hear
Yeah,
Brian.
Louis, I can hear you. I can hear you fine.
Test. Can you hear me?
But Tori, if you can help us out, just maybe count to 10 while Brandon maybe dials in that setting.
Okay.
And we'll let you know when we start hearing you.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
You got a war bonnet, Don?
9.
Brian?
Be cool if it was in Ho-Chunk. Donnie, Joe.
Yeah. It's more like that. It's going for that halo from those religious photos.
I like when the kids do that last one. They're like, they'll cry.
Brandon, I think when Tori talks, her silhouette in her Zoom will start showing up. It was doing that earlier. See, like right now it's on Brian or myself, that yellow silhouette. And when Tori talks in the chambers, that should show up, but it's not showing up. So we can hear each other on the Zoom. We just can't hear the chambers and the council members in the chambers.
Hey, for the memberships, let's just take a recess while we figure this out so that if memberships waiting or watching, we're going to take a recess until we can get our audio.
And it looks like Tori's trying to talk, but I still can't hear her.
Oh, so the membership wouldn't be able to hear either? Yeah. Oh, okay. So anybody online, they can't hear us. Okay, my mom said can barely hear you and Coley, Louie and Brian loud and clear. So that's somebody that's tuned into the meeting.
Can you hear me?
minutes then. So bear with us, Carla. Go check on those copies.
Keeps going to book. I hate that. Ryan, can you hear me? Ryan.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
What?
Can you hear us, Brian?
Yeah, I can hear you.
See me first when you want to hop that.
Well, now.
Yeah, we're just trying to get that live.
Brian, that
Oh, okay.
star quilt behind you is just amazing. Can you see yourself? It's just beautiful behind you. I really like that star quilt.
You don't look all that bad either, though.
Well, Louis said, "Is that like a headdress?" And I said, "No, it's actually I'm going for that papal aura."
I thought it was war bonnet.
That was war button.
Yeah, well,
It almost makes you look bald, though. Cut some of your hair off. Yeah, there you go. This is Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Louis, we met some of your relatives this weekend. It was
Who?
the grandson of, what was it, Papoose? The gentleman's name was Sean Papoose.
He's a German.
Yeah, and so he's the grandfather of I can't remember the gentleman's name, but the last name is Papoose.
Yeah.
And they said to say hello to you.
His Coca and Frank Beaver were the founders of NCAI.
That's what he shared with us. Okay. All right. Sounds like we're back on and connected. Thank you to our IT team and communications team for getting that working. We're resumed from our recess, and Brian had a comment on the minutes. Brian, can you point that out, what you were referencing, or share with us?
yeah. In that last set of minutes, we adjourned at the same minute that we came out of executive session.
Okay, so that would be at 4:25.
Yes.
Okay. Well, let's see. We did pass a motion. Coley and Eric, do you want to rescind that and we do it over with correction?
Yes.
Okay. So Coley rescinds his motion and Eric rescinds his second.
Yes.
Okay. Would somebody like to make the motion of the August 11th, 2022 land meeting enrollment update and physical resources report meeting minutes as corrected?
Make that motion.
Motion by Eric. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Coley. Discussion. Objection. Motion carried, 700. Thank you for that, Brian.
600.
Oh, 600. Okay. Thank you, Eric. Moving on to ratification, we have one, approving assistance for tribal member Burt County Power District bill. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion by Louis. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Coley. Discussion. Objection. Motion carried, 700. We just did the ratification of the 5 signature. Oh, and the typo error? Oh, and then we had a correction to the minutes, so. Coley and Eric rescinded the motion to correct it. It was the adjourned time, was 4:25 by the board. So
Okay.
corrected that with motion by question.
It was 425?
Yes, rather than 4:45.
Okay.
Um,
So that was the new motion.
Eric and Corey for this swap.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion, carried that motion, that 5 signature. Thank you, council. Moving on to new business. Tribal Council really recently took a couple trips, and the first one was the 2022 Tribal Self-Governance Conference in San Francisco, California. And we were very fortunate to take a delegation of Tribal Council and Communications. WCHS was represented. Joy from the planning department was accompanied by Brittany as well. So we had a full team out there with the intention of learning more about the self-governance process, doing some networking, and with the real intention of pursuing the taking over law enforcement through the tribal the self-governance opportunities such as we have with the hospital. And so when the tribe decides to do that, we'll be like other tribes that have tribal police forces, and currently we have a BIA police force. So the first thing that I think I guess we learned when we got there was that the conference had to reprogram their agendas each day because so many people canceled due to monkeypox. And the city of San Francisco had declared a monkeypox emergency, and naturally a lot of folks decided not to come. So there was modified agendas every day. So I think that going forward, I hope that that's not the experience of the table, when they go somewhere. So I guess opening it up, did anybody want to share about specific portions, or did you want to just have general information?
I do.
Okay, Lorelai.
I just want everybody to know that before I left for Omaha, I put out tobacco and prayed for all of us that are traveling for safe trips. Prayed for our families that were here to keep them safe, and our tribal members. But I also, I took that meeting really seriously. And I attended everything. And I saw that, well, I don't know, maybe I'm radical, but they controlled the message the way I looked at it. There was no microphones for the conference participants to make any comments. If there were any questions, they were asked by the moderator that was running each panel. And then to me, there was even, I felt, a lack of spiritual in this conference. And I thought I was the only one that was thinking that way. I didn't want to be sour grapes, but I found out I wasn't the only one who why can't the conference participants ask questions or make comments as there were presentations on our self-governance process? So it was almost like the message was being controlled. And I had the chairman from, I was talking to the chairman from Washoe chairman. And he said he thinks they're controlling the audience input because at the last conference, he said there was some tribes that were upset about self-governance process, and they brought it up, and they didn't want to have that at this conference. That's what he told me. That's why they controlled it. But I didn't think that was good participation, open arms to participation by the tribes that were there. That's my own opinion. And at one point, they showed a beautiful film of a young woman, and it was, I just cried when I watched that film. It was so beautiful. Her name was Lakota Beatty, and she's an Indian girl from Oklahoma. And her sister were all-staters in basketball in the state of Oklahoma. And then they became starters for Oklahoma, the university. And one day her sister said, "Okay, I'm going now, I'll see you." So Lakota said she should have said something to her like, I love you or something, because when the sister left, she committed suicide. And the family had no clue that she was going through anything. And she never said anything. And so this family was grieving, really grieving. And then this sister that played ball with her, she said she was thinking about it, and she thought, when we were 11 years old, we went to a basketball camp, and we started learning basketball skills. And she thought, and so in her sister's memory, she started teaching at basketball camps to Indian youth there in Oklahoma. And they showed her in her teaching where she's telling them how important they are. And that each one of them matters, and your people need you. I mean, while she was teaching them dribbling and other things. And I thought that was so beautiful that she found that way to heal and, in her sister's memory, teach other young Indians to play basketball, to learn skills. And I thought it was so beautiful. So then when the film was over, she came out, they introduced her and the filmmaker, his name was Bal. And then there was no way for the conference participants to stand up and give her words of encouragement for what she's going through. The conference just kind of ended and everybody got up and walked out, and I thought, man. And I really I sent an email to the chairwoman of our Winnebago Public School Board, Teresa Little George, and to Mr. Farringer. And I said we should get that film and show it to our kids in our school. Because it's really positive, and it can help maybe somebody that may be thinking that way that we don't know about in our school. But I was disappointed in that, but eventually, in one of the breakout sessions, the people from Red Lake, they had a beautiful pipe ceremony before their presentation, and so I felt better after that. But, you know, a lot of time I spent out smoking cigarettes, meeting people from other tribes. And, you know, one tribe, they're way up there in Alaska. And everything to their village has to be barged in. And they told me that right now the gas price in their village is $12.60 a gallon. And they don't know how they're going to have heating this winter because of the cost of fuel. And they don't have a lot of trees in order, you know, to have wood. And so I thought, gee, sometimes we think it's hard for us or we have a hard time, but some of those areas, it's really rough. And I feel for those people. But anyway, that was just my own kind of take on it. But I also recognize that the Winnebago tribe needs to be present at the table when these are going on. And I appreciate the council members that do go to meetings, that can go. Because our voice is very important in any of these, where it's self-governance or whether it's the National Indian Health Board or it's the Tribal Advisory Committee for the Secretary. Those are all very important meetings, and I'm really glad that all of us could go. And then we found out something really important, so I want to ask Joy, our planning director, to just explain this so the council knows that there's something we have to go after now that we found out there. And this is on section 105L. Joy, do you want to go ahead and explain it?
Sure. So it's a recent change within the last year or so, and it's probably, as Danelle and I had talked, and Danelle, feel free to chime in, that it's a change in how they do our support costs. And previously, it was about, for probably the primary piece is on the rental of our facilities. So as we're delivering the programs, functions, services, and activities, they call those PFSAs, that they allowed us some monetary amount for office space, but it didn't take into account all the costs associated with office space costs. And it's enough of a game changer that, for example, if we would build a new building, for example, and this is just an example, if we built a new justice center, that the costs, if we would borrow the money to build that new building, that they will now cover the costs of principal and interest as a part of that building. They're recognizing the fact that buildings don't just appear out of nowhere and that you have operating costs for maintenance and cleaning and those types of things. That there's actually a depreciation cost, there's actually a cost for the building itself, there's a cost associated with replacing and upgrading HVAC, keeping the plumbing in working order, addressing functional obsolescence, those types of things. So they're now recognizing that they did not recognize before. So we would now have an opportunity to fully be compensated for the cost of a building. This is huge, not only for as we're looking at self-governance, but also as we're negotiating our 638 contracts, as we are putting in what our costs are. There's also a new change associated with this. And we've had recent conversations with the BIA on this, where we're needing to not only put in what was our previous year's budget and what it takes to operate our programs, but we also need to put down what we actually need. So we'll be showing and sharing with them what is the cost for us to do business, what is the amount that they funded previously, so that we can now be able to show what's called an unmet need, so that once the Congress has appropriated funds for the fiscal year, that they can look at fully compensating us to actually run our programs the way we need to run them, for what it costs to run those programs, so we're not always running on a year behind or whatever. And that's particularly important this year, where we're seeing a much higher level of inflation in our operational costs. So there's a couple things. One, we have a chance of having our regular day-to-day operations covered better, and also now to be able to recoup what our costs of our buildings actually are that we didn't have available to us before.
Thank you, Joy, for that overview. I do know that, Danelle, did you want to comment on which sections that we include in our 105L leasing request?
Yeah, thank you. I think Joy did a pretty good job of explaining the program. So just for some clarification, the 105L lease program applies to buildings that are either owned or leased by the tribe to carry out the PFSAs under a 638 contract or compact. So, for example, I guess at WCHS, for the spaces that we are leasing from the tribe outside of the hospital campus, we are working on entering into a 105L lease with the Indian Health Service to cover the maintenance and operation costs of those facilities. And so this program would also apply to the BIA contracted programs that the tribe has as well. And a lease, the process would be to submit a letter of intent, and then there's a couple of different ways, or actually I think 3 different ways, that the cost can be calculated. And so we would just have to work with our finance department to look at the best way, I guess, to either, like the whole lease amount, if all of the other things are included with it, such as the cleaning and utilities and so forth, or if you look at actual costs. And I think the new part of this program, though, that is really important is if we build new facilities to carry out these 638 programs, then you can actually cover, you'd have to pay for it up front, but you could cover if you had a loan, you could cover principal and interest, and then also depreciation. And I was looking further at the regs for it, and you can also include a reserve fund for replacement of facilities. So it's really, really will be a great benefit to the tribe as we go forward with getting these into place and looking at future facility needs.
Thanks, Danelle.
So Danelle, we could include that once we build our EMS building, right? For our ambulance side?
Yes,
That
for
square
the EMS
footage?
portion of it, because that's part of our 638 compact.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other comments on the self-governance conference? Okay, thank you again. We might still hear forms and bits about the meeting when they come up from different conversations. So I don't want to say that this is the total sharing of information, but I just wanted to provide some. The next meeting that Eric and I attended was the Tribal Strategic Planning meeting at Fort Hall, Idaho. The tribe had received a letter of invitation to this meeting from the Coalition of Large Treaty Tribes, and it was hosted at the Fort Hall Casino and in part, I think, with the Ute tribe. And it was a wonderful meeting of the minds. The tribal leaders were well represented. I gave you guys a handout of everyone who was in attendance. And the main objective of the meeting was to talk about the recent court case, Oklahoma v. Castro Huerta Supreme Court case. And we heard a briefing from our general counsel. But what that court case essentially does is give the state concurrent jurisdiction over non-Indians on the reservation. So think of a scenario where there might be a non-Indian and the state is going to prosecute them or not prosecute them. And if the state is going to kind of be in our turf, basically, and that it erases 200 years of case law and as we understood it and how that jurisdiction was applied on the reservation. Previous to this meeting, our general counsel, Jennifer, and I had participated in an NCAI closed call for tribes on this case as well. And NCAI has, and the group that was on the phone, they have some ideas on how Indian country should address this issue. Very conservative. Our general counsel has received a copy of that plan, so you'll get a copy of it at our general counsel meeting. And talking with our friends at the COLT meeting, there's other school of thoughts on how we approach this. And my goal is to provide the council with all the information and to have a more in-depth discussion during general council to decide what strategy we'd like to, kind of hang with, exercise. And this court case is so damaging to everything that the tribes that they lean on this case law and the sovereignty. So it's a real diminishment and threat to sovereignty, and it kind of cuts us right in the throat. Another thing that's really scary is that the Supreme Court is due to hear a case on ICWA, and if this is how they've approached this case, this is really scary. And so I just want to make sure that the tribe has every tool and every briefing, and so we'll talk about this multiple times. I'd like to share more of the meeting later because I'm not in the position to share what other tribes and their perspective. All I can say is that there's a couple schools of thoughts out there, and I'd be happy to share some of those more privately. And I'm not in a position to speak for other tribes. In the materials, you also got all the attendees, and then there's a PowerPoint presentation that goes over the various topics. So not only did we talk about the Castro case, we talked about some of the land issues and tribal homelands and public land issues that they're having. We talked about water issues. One of the ones, I'll skip down to this discussion regarding federal recognition. There's a bill out there. It's called the MOA Act, and you'll find that in the PowerPoint presentation. And this bill that's out there is essentially going to give congressional folks the ability to federally recognize a tribe. And right now, the process to be federally recognized is a very intensive process through the Department of the Interior. And this MOA Act is trying to recognize, they're the Mobile, oh shoot, we wrote it down, huh, Eric? They're out of Texas? They're out of Texas, and this group have a thought that they were a tribe, but they failed the Interior's process on 2 occasions. So on this 3rd occasion, they've got somebody to put a bill together for them. But that means that any state representative can say, you're a tribe. And that's just not how it works. So we're very much so concerned about the MOA Act. And you'll find that in your materials. The Respect Act, that's another one that the tribe didn't provide comments for, but we learned more during this presentation. The Respect Act, the one good thing that it does is it codifies tribal consultation for all federal agencies. And that means that when there's anything that would impact the tribe or our homelands, that all these federal agencies would have to consult with the tribe and, see what the tribe had to say about it. This Respect Act, in some ways, kind of gives the federal agencies like an out. And so there's more to learn about that. And we did have a call with Grijalva's staffers. And we also had the opportunity to make mention of our lands bill, and that we hope that it could get to markup through Grijalva's leadership. So on one hand, it was like asking him for our lands bill, and then on the other hand, we're like, your bill needs work, because it's very alarming that the federal agencies would have the ability to opt out of consultation, and even in some ways, what was the other point? I hope there's more work on it so that we can continue to support this bill, because we do need this gentleman's support on our bill. Oh, I know, it was up for interpretation, that they were leaving some of the things up to the agency to interpret. I'm like, that is scary, if every person can have that flexibility on how they consult with the tribes. So more to learn on that, and also when we go to DC in September, it'll give us a chance to have FaceTime, hopefully with Grijalva staff, and provide a little finesse, because it's hard to ask for something and then be critical in the next breath. So, but also that this would, like other things, kind of turn the cart upside down. Like, that's not how it works. So, but very glad that we had some time to talk directly with Grijalva staff on our bill. I was also acknowledging all the work that brought us to this point with the land bill. So I made sure to mention all you guys. Eric, did you want to say something about the meeting? It was a really good meeting. I mean, we were well received.
One thing I'd like to say is we're not alone in some of the things that we're looking at through the problems that we're having as a tribe. And so when we go to DC, we're looking at having a lot more tribes arrive as well, and have the legislators come to us, and we would be able to ask our questions, because otherwise it's always us going to them throughout Indian country, and that was one of the big complaints. And so the larger congregation we can take from our council, as along with other councils throughout Indian country, I think the bigger impact we'll have in Washington, D.C., to overcome some of the obstacles that we're facing now. Thank you.
So the next steps, and the group, as you can see, represented in the sign-in sheet, they're not from our region, and it was really good to be in another region and to hear them fired up about the same things that we're fired up about. And it felt like we were amongst friends, like it was like, man, we got to get together more often, because we can support each other, and letting them know that sometimes when we're working on something, I need a broader network of tribal leaders that I can call upon to say, hey, did you guys see this? And because with so many topics and so many things going on, not one tribe or not one person could be on it all, even our general counsel. So it was helpful to compare notes, and we can share that more later. But the takeaway and the next step, because very much so, it wasn't just a one-time discussion. We're looking at planning a trip to DC. The Ute tribe said that they would set up and sponsor and coordinate a meeting space so that we could invite the congressional folks there instead of running around like all over Capitol Hill, which is what we usually do. They are even interested in perhaps coming here. So I told them there's an open invitation, and if we would be happy to share information with them. That was the Ute tribe that expressed interest in coming to visit. So the week of September 19th, we had already had on the calendar of a delegation to DC, so we suggested a time before Congress goes on recess, and also, unfortunately, before NCAI does their Hill Day. And that kind of goes to the point where we're not all on the same page, but we have to try to get there and talk with one another. And before, I guess, the tribe decides on which avenue that they would like to explore, I think we need to learn more about. And so, I guess that's all I want to say. That, if that makes sense, or
No, it kind of it does, you know. And you know, remember I was telling you when I first started, I was always logging into these consultation sessions, and I'm like, you know, they answer our questions, whatever, but they still do whatever the hell they want to do. They just say, oh, we're consulted, but they still do. So I was looking at, you know, like the proposed activity, the decision stage and stuff like that, and it says pretty much the same thing, but it's written out. We do whatever we want to do, you know, as long as we consulted, we can still do what we want to do. I can see it
so
already.
just in that language, you can see how
Yeah.
that's not good for tribes.
No, it isn't. And just reading it, like glancing over it, you know, it's not. So that'd be something interesting. I'd like to get more involved with that.
Awesome. Thank you, Rona. And the more, I guess, we kind of know about these little things, we can talk about them with other tribal leaders. And I guess I would say we were well received because they were kept, like, it was almost like it was us meeting with the Utes. It almost kind of seemed like, you know, the discussion was just robust and very much so interested in kind of bringing Winnebago to help them as well. So I just want to thank Eric for being there, and I also like to express Eric helped the veterans there. He jumped right in and was I mean it, they put him to work. So thank you, Eric, for your kindness and your generosity with your time and your service to all Indian communities. So I think that about covers it, and I can share more about the details and positions offline.
Sounds like
I think-
a couple pretty good trips.
Louis, did you have something?
I think we need to go through that bill. We all understand it. There's a lot there in that case came from Oklahoma. We gotta understand how it impacts how it's gonna go through Nebraska. Because we're a public law 280 state. And we worked out an agreement with the state. The state has to follow its agreement with us. And we got to look at all the ramifications of it. With the governor we have there now, I don't know what he'll do. Could be bad. Because he counts Indians to get money in his budgets, and he won't give tribes any of the money.
Yeah.
It does things that are crazy. So we've got to look at his behavior and developing our strategy. But we got to think it through. That's what, when I worked on retrofishing, Watford and Paraguay, we get into these arguments. One would take one side and one would take the other. And they get mad at each other in their arguments. because they put their energy into it. And we've got to put our energy into being ready for whatever they might come at us with. Because I'm afraid this can have more effects like other issues. Thank you.
Thanks, Louis, for sharing that. And you're spot on. And the two different approaches that I'm kind of referencing, one of them takes on PL 280, and the other one doesn't take on things that they don't want to, disrupt. So, and with us being a PL 280 state, our circumstances are going to be different from maybe other tribes that don't have that situation. So we will talk more about that during General Council on some of those specifics and have a more expanded discussion. Eric?
We have land in Coos that land on the Iowa side of the Missouri River is in full federal control. The state has nothing to say there. Public Law 280 defined the area as in Nebraska. So they're different.
So that's another excellent point, is that this law is going to impact our tribe in two different ways based on where the land is at.
One more thing I wanted to say was, out of 574 federally recognized tribes, about only 15 tribes showed up for this large treaty tribes meeting, or the strategic planning meeting that took place. And so one thing that we're looking for is more tribes to participate and hopefully go to DC with us, so we'll have a bigger voice. I mean, we have had about 15 tribes show up. That's good, but we're kind of hopefully waiting for some more tribes to join us in the DC trip. So just, waiting for more tribes. Thank you.
I got one. Going back to that Oklahoma versus Castro Huerta, that Supreme Court ruling, I was thinking about it, and we can't even get Thurston County to plow our side of the road because it's always been that we don't pay taxes. So if a non-Indian, under that new ruling, a non-Indian commits a crime on the reservation, the state can have jurisdiction and prosecute. But the county we live in don't even want to let us vote. We have to join a lawsuit with NARF to defend our voting districts. And they don't want to spend a dime in Winnebago because they can't get tax money out of us. And so if a non-Indian commits a crime, I don't even think we're going to see anything from Thurston County. And we have already trying to schedule a meeting with the U.S. Attorney to see what the U.S. Attorney side is going to do on these cases. But we still have a tool, and my thought about it is, if a non-Indian commits a crime against a Winnebago tribal member, we should banish them. Just flat out banish them. That's our tool. So anyway, I just wanted to give that input because that ruling says the state can have jurisdiction over non-Indians committing crimes against Indians on our reservation, and they ain't going to do it. They don't get any tax money to do it for. So that's just my own opinion, but I wanted to just bring that up too. Thank you.
Good point, Lorelei. Another layer. Brian.
Eastern County got spoiled because they had the Brown-Stevens Act for Winnebago's and Omaha's. It allowed the state to tax trust land. And they took land away from us, from people who did pay their taxes. They took the land away. And that was one of the ways to usurp the tribe and get the land. So they're pretty tricky, but we can beat them.
That's what I said, huh, Eric? I said the Winnebago tribe took on the Army Corps of Engineers through Louis' leadership, and we beat them. So we feel the same way, Louis.
Mm-hmm.
And that
Overall, the larger aspect of that ruling is pretty much just though in relation to the Republican bloodlust to go after control of a woman's body. It's really just about abortion because that's where it stemmed from and that's where they wanted it to go. They won't give a damn about murders happening and et cetera. They really won't. I concur with Lorelai's point on that part of the comment. This is more about controlling a woman if she decides for some reason and is capable of receiving health care on a reservation. This is really the gross detail that that entire party is going after women. That's really what it's about.
Thank you for that insight, Brian. You know, they always find a way, and so I think our strategy has to be thinking ahead as well. So, but we'll talk more about that with our general counsel, and she'll have some points to offer that maybe Eric and I didn't mention.
I just got a reminder that we do pay land tax of land that's not in trust on all our fee lands. So we do pay about 60,000 to the county every year.
Oh, good.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
they can't say, yeah, the fee land, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so so prosecute them. Okay. So our next agenda item is planning for Congressman Smith visit. I did see that was looking to be scheduled. Is this person being? Are they up for re-election? Is that it's an election
usual,
year?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have the 24th at 11:30.
September 24th.
Yeah. No, August.
Oh, August.
11:30.
So
That
did,
was the meeting
at this
calendar.
time, did the council want to talk about or put forward any discussion items, or I guess, did you want to do that now, or doing that during general council, or was this just to put it on the radar?
It's just to put it on the radar that we
Okay.
need to plan for it.
Yeah.
I know, I wanted to have on his meeting is the mapping of Thurston County, why we have to go to court. Because of the way they're gonna control our vote, or they wanna control our vote, split up our voting in Thurston County, so that we had to join that lawsuit. But I think he needs to be aware of that.
I think there's a lot of problems within the tribal organization of what we're looking at, you know, even the land in Iowa, to bring him up to speed on that, you know, along with the gerrymandered lines of the Omaha Creek being the voting line. That there's a few, I think this should be talked about before that visit, so we come up with some questions or things to put on his radar.
Okay. So I jotted those two things down. We will have general
And
counsel.
to reiterate,
Go ahead,
oh,
Brian.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
And saying to reiterate on the line of what Eric was bringing up, he is a seasoned politician, but remember his representation of us is a result of the redistricting. So there's going to have to be a necessary educational component because he was always in the room, but he was never at the table. That was usually Fortenberry or someone else. Now he's acquired the Indian, so to speak. So he's going to have to be taught a lot of very fundamental things.
Thank you, Brian, for knowing that, and it's the part, I guess, where they say we continually have to educate them on even the basics, and we think.
I have a comment.
Louis.
When we figured out how the Nebraska delegation operated, it was Sloan that did the thinking, and he talked to Curtis, and they told Nebraska what to do. So we had to get to zone first. Anything we wanted and needed. And we were able to work things through, but we found out that it doesn't help the tribe to go in and raise hell with them. We'd like to do that. We found out it was counterproductive. We told them the good things that are happening where our children are learning the language, where they're doing better in school, where we have more children graduating from college. So we talk about the positive things that we're doing. And yeah, we've got bad things happening. But by and large, we can be positive. When Carl Curtis lost his wife, months later, he came to the tour like this. And he went to that camp in South Sioux, on the west side of town. And he met with the white people, and they raised hell with him. They didn't give him any slack. And he came to Winnebago, and we treated him with loyalty. He sat up and watched the powwow. My daughter Carla was a little girl, and she was playing with the senator. He got recognized, he got honored, and he had a good time. Then he went to Macy, and the Omahs gave him hell. And he went to Pender, and he caught hell. He remembered the experience of coming to the Winnebagos. And we talked tough issue, but we treated him respectfully. And it made a big difference because he would vote for us. And Nebraska would vote for us. So we've got to dwell on the positive things and not get hung up on the negative side, although we got to tell them that this Oklahoma case is bad. It's going to hurt a lot of people. But I just wanted to share that with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis. And, we have to count on the experience of, some of you guys and how we build these relationships for the best outcomes of the tribe. And sometimes, like we were talking about that Grijalva stuff, we have, the support goes both ways. So we will definitely remember that. So with that, keep thinking of agenda items. We can revisit that through email. We can revisit that with Jennifer if we want her to put together documents in advance of that visit. So we'll work towards that. August 24th.
When you're talking about that trip to DC in September, is it right around the same area that NCAI is meeting there too? Or?
Theirs, I think, is in early October.
Oh, okay.
But that's the thing, they're not with NCI. They're going a different direction. Next item on the agenda is the Pandemic Task Force and WCHS Public Health Department COVID Services Update. I did see that we have some more new cases of COVID through the community, and some of the outreach from the tribal members, they wanted services or resources to help them in their ailments. and a lot of that has expired or the funding has run out, and we asked the public health department to provide an overview and update, and Mona was kind enough to give us a written report on quarantine and isolation updates, and we've also invited the pandemic task force to share any further information to address the questions the council had. Would anybody like to open it up? That was part of the email. Okay. Danelle, would you like to open up with some comments based on the emails that were sent?
Sure, I can do that. First, Mona sends her apologies. She had a prior commitment, so she wasn't able to join the meeting tonight. So she prepared a written update for the tribal council and the task force. So I circulated that by email earlier this afternoon. And so basically, this is an update, further update, I guess, from the one that she had sent out about a month or so ago, just to talk about the progression of slowly kind of winding down the support that has been provided by the health department for people who are in quarantine and isolation. And so that document summarizes it and basically, again, just talks about the progression of how we've been winding down the housing program for quarantine and isolation, as well as the grocery program. So currently, for the food, the full program ended on May 1st, and again, it's just a progression as the pandemic continues on and transitions from being a pandemic to an endemic. And so right now, what the public health department is doing is there are people who have really critical needs as far as food or needing supportive services. They will work with them just to help find support. But the full program to do all of their groceries for the entire quarantine and isolation program is no longer in service. So it's on a limited basis, and it's for people who need have a really critical need for that. The housing, slowly, kind of piece by piece, the housing units that were utilized for quarantine and isolation were removed from the program and turned back over to the tribe. And as of right now, all of those units have been turned back over to the tribe. They're no longer part of the MOU with the health department to provide that program. However, on a case-by-case basis, if there's somebody who really needs housing for the short duration of the isolation period, tribal housing and the health department have arranged to continue to use the wildlife park cabins if that need is there. I think the biggest thing to note through this is the change in the CDC guidelines and just the transition of the COVID-19 to an endemic state. I shared another update too in a separate email from the National Indian Health Board that kind of summarized the new CDC guidelines that just came out the other day. So for people who are exposed, they are no longer required to quarantine, like in-home away from people. The new guidance says that they just have to wear a mask for that period of time. So that is not, the guidelines there are not as strict as it was. And for people who test positive, the isolation period for positive COVID-19 cases is now 5 days, and it starts with the first day of symptoms, not with the first day of testing. So typically, by the time people go to test, they're, as Mona notes in her report, it's sometimes on day 2, 3, or even day 4. So their actual in-home isolation period ends up being only a day or 2. And then after that time, as long as their symptoms are improving and they're no longer having a fever or they don't have a fever, then they just have to wear a mask for an additional 5 days. So that's kind of the summary of where we are with the guidance from the CDC and the supportive service programs that have been offered throughout the pandemic.
Thanks, Danelle.
Danelle, what's the process for it if a vulnerable older tribal member or someone that has health issues test positive, and is it the provider in the clinic that has them go up to Sioux City to get remdesivir IV, or how does that work? Do we have it in our facility, or do we refer them up to the city for remdesivir?
Yeah, we do have that available. And if needed, if it's up to the provider really if they need to be referred out for that, but we do have a limited supply available in our pharmacy.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Any other questions for our public health?
Are there any monkey cases in the Abilene area?
Danelle, do you know
Yeah.
if there are any monkeypox cases in our area?
Well, no, not that have been reported, not locally.
Coley, did you want to say something?
Yeah. I think we just make this, needs to be put out there, and the statement stating that this is what we're doing. And I think it needs to go to HR department too, as to how, with work. What are they granted? What are they not granted? And things like who has to go to work and who doesn't, and so on. So I think we do just need to make this statement. This is what we are doing. That we all agreed to do this, and we all agreed what not to do, because that wasn't out there. These decisions, that was my question. Who made these decisions? When were they made? There's a pandemic task force that was created, so we can end that. Danelle's the only one online, of the task force right now. So, that's what I think. We need to make that statement, put this out there. This is what we're doing. This is what we're not doing. And so there's no ifs and whats and buts. No more phone calls. No more emails. And that's what we need to stick by. This is what we're going to do, and this is the final update, and what's going on. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Coley. And so several months ago, I don't know if you guys remember when I had mentioned that at the hospital board meeting that Mona had briefed the board on her awareness and the work that the hospital was going to be doing to moving towards an endemic. And at that time, I said, okay, well, we'll have to do some education to the community, because whether it moves towards an endemic, a person that catches COVID now or a person that caught COVID 2 years ago feel just as vulnerable and would expect services in the form of, isolation housing, groceries, and everything that the tribe provided when they had those special resources from the CARES Act. And the CARES Act was about, the ARPA was recovery, the CARES was like addressing it, right? So the hard part is that, and it's hard to hear, but when they move towards an endemic, they're treating it just like the flu. And because when it was an epidemic, we didn't have a vaccination. So now that there's a vaccination, they treat it just like the flu and refer you to your primary care doctor, or, make an appointment. And so that's really hard to hear when you have COVID and you're just as scared, especially if you're not vaccinated. And for something that was so, I guess, tragic and drastic around the world, it's hard to accept it's an endemic and it's just like the flu now. But one thing that I had mentioned to one of the council members was that, okay, well, if we think that it's still a problem and we still think that there should be these things, the tribe would have to provide those, because the federal funding that came to address those have expired, and we've spent them doing those activities. So when there's a date on here that says May 1st we had stopped, it's probably because the money has for some time run out, and then since we were still in the pandemic at the time, the health department found resource to continue that work. But at some point, we have to move towards the endemic or provide services on our own. What Coley said, when does the tribe want to lift the public health emergency? Because until we have that ongoing, the community is still operating with that thought that we're in this public health emergency. And I don't know if we do, like, did I remember we used to do the weekly updates and provide information? I don't know if we need to do an update and explain what an endemic is.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Just so that
Just put the information out there and make sure the questions are being addressed. And the other thing to note too is that COVID-19 testing does continue to be available. So people can still come and get the PCR test through the drive-up COVID testing clinic. And the at-home tests also continue to be available. They just have to call the PHN CHR office, and they'll deliver those at-home tests. So testing continues to be available. And right now the Public Health Nursing Department is continuing to offer the COVID vaccine on Wednesdays. Eventually, that will move into the clinic and be done on an outpatient basis. But for right now, the PHN program is still continuing to offer the COVID-19 vaccine. And we should, I would like to still urge the community and the tribal membership to get vaccinated and to get their boosters when they're due, so they can continue to be protected from it.
Yeah, I got my booster.
Your second one?
I didn't get my second one. Janelle, I just had a comment. I was listening to I'm always paying attention to health stuff, and they announced in the news that last week, they announced that there's a new virus in China. And it's got a long word for it, but it's like an adenovirus. And they said so far, as of that date they reported it, there was 33. But, this COVID-19 started in China, and look where it went. So I'm kind of mindful of watching for that new virus that they're seeing in China. And so would your recommendation be not to rescind or lift that resolution until we see how well we're doing?
I don't think it hurts to keep the resolution in place, and and then I guess with it being there, we can just continue to monitor cases, monitor this new virus that's in the news.
Okay.
And I think the communication, to the public, like Coley had suggested, is really a good idea, just to make sure people know that it's being monitored, and here's what's available now, and this is why.
Okay. I just want to let the membership know, too, that I sent an email to Mona Z. She's our public health expert, and I asked her, what does CDC say about protection against this monkeypox? And you could just tell I'm really old, because I said, I remember getting the smallpox vaccine when I was little. I still have the scar on my arm. So I said, would this smallpox vaccine, would that prevent against monkeypox? And she emailed back that it's 85% effective against monkeypox if you had the smallpox vaccine. But I know that many of our young people haven't had that vaccine. They stopped giving it. Probably maybe I'm the last generation that got it when I was little. I don't know. But CDC did say that the smallpox vaccine is 85% effective against monkeypox, too. Just for our older people, that was good news to hear, because it would be our older people that had the smallpox vaccine. So that's good news. Thank you.
Okay. So Danelle, do you want to work with the task force or work with Mona to get, or your communications department, to get some information out there in some form? Or would you like Coley and I's help as board members? How should we proceed? Because
Yeah, I can pass that along to our communications department and Mona, and we can work on putting something together.
Okay, and I guess I just kind of threw me and Coley under the bus because everything that is happening or not happening has to be supported and understood. And if I guess if it's coming from the top down, then we have to own that. And it's hard when we get the emails and the phone calls, and it's really easy to just refer to the hospital. But if the more we understand where we're at in this episode, then we can share that information. Okay. Does everybody feel good about that? Okay. Okay. So moving on, we have one tribal council item regarding human resources. So turn it to Coley.
Thank you. I do want to thank former President Trump for all the millions of dollars he sent our way, though, in his election time. I bring this to the tribal council's attention, and if we move forward more with it, all the conversations we've had, the traffic about terminations, no hires, no rehires and stuff. I guess basically this does reflect, it shines on us as tribal council members. You all know, somebody reaches out to you that was terminated, and I'm just really at this point at year 5, and I'm really just anti-terminating our tribal members and stuff, and redoing. And you heard me say this with our human resources department. We have 3 of them, 4 of them, and what is our mission, and where are we going with this? Maybe I'm way off track. Don't even know what I'm saying, but it does reflect on us, this tribe, when an individual gets terminated. And I just believe that we need to start these discussions and have these discussions for our people, so it is fair, honestly fair, for our tribal members. So if we can bring this to the, I'm just really at a loss of words, where I want to go with this.
I hear you, Coley. I'll help you out. What I'm hearing you say and what we've talked about in other situations is that we should do everything we can to retain a tribal member. And sometimes our tribal members mess up and we're like, but because then it violated the policy or it did this or that. And then sometimes some of them have a hard time getting rehired. And then we see conversations or outcomes where it feels like we stuck up more for the non-tribal member than we did to try to save our tribal member. And so then when they come to us with their situation, then we say, well, you should go to the DHD, or, oh, you should do this. But, sometimes we already know that that's not going to help them, but it's the process.
Yeah.
And the council does everything to try to not meddle in the human resources, but it's really hard not to when the people who elected you told you I'm being treated unfairly. So I'm just thinking about the DHD already exists, but remember when we're having about human resources, we were saying we need to create another layer of review, and that kind of exists too because they still come here. But I don't know what is healthy, but I hear what you want to accomplish. Am I off base, or is that what you're kind of?
You're right.
Okay.
You're helping me a lot. I said lost for words. I don't know what's going on, but yes, get into. You heard me say, we are educated and we're young, and we have people coming in with no experience overseeing 5 employees, a dozen, 2 dozen, 300 employees with no experience. at that level. And we go through the directors, the department managers, and then when they leave and when they're non-Indian or they're other tribal members, then where are we at, So I just think if we want to, I'm open and I'm willing to get into, so we're all on the same page. We're all on the same mission. It's probably going to be two different when we get there. This is for tribal members. This is for other tribal members and non-Indians that work for us, But basically, there's extreme measures where, a tribal member does need to be terminated. But, a lot of it is just, it's kind of silly, when we hear these things, why? And, if it was for a simple little attitude, attitudes colliding, for our people that are ill, and so on, it is concerning, and it just got to a point where, it does reflect on us, where we're going as a tribe, and if we're all on the same page, and I guess we need to make that clear where we're at with that, and move this to the CEO, and we'll be together tomorrow for the strategic meeting and stuff, so I just hope we can discuss this more and try and figure something out, and yeah, that's all.
Thanks, Coley. And we do have another strategic planning meeting tomorrow, so we can have some more in-depth discussion with our CEO. But I hear what you're saying, and I support what you're saying, and I just want to figure out how we do this in a way that's healthy and productive, because we should stack the deck in favor of our tribal members. And in hiring processes, they get extra points for being a tribal member, but there are other ways that we could craft solutions that stay within being we're an equal opportunity employer, but we're also a sovereign nation. And so remember what I was saying, that we're always saying we live in these two worlds, and we got to find the balance between our best practices. Mm-hmm. So I'm with you on this. I just don't know the answer. But we've seen enough situations where we know that our tribal members should have had a better outcome. Sometimes regardless of the situation, because there are people, But then there's those other cases where it just was so egregious that they can no longer serve in that role. So,
yeah.
Anybody else want to add to that?
I do. Okay. I'd like to add to that by saying
Wait, hold on, ladies first.
Okay, all right.
I think we need to look at the policy of our HR about relatives. Because if you have a family that really valued education and their family members went to college and came back here to serve, then because they're related, they can't be supervised by somebody. But yet they can be a good employee for the position they want, so I think we need to amend that part of the policy about if you're related, because and make it where everybody can work, and then there's what is it? Somebody else is supervising. That's not a relative. I think we need to take that into consideration, because we're asking our members to get educated. We support their college. Then when they go and they come back, they can't get a job because maybe they're related to somebody in that chain. And I think that's wrong. I think we need to amend that policy to make it where it's workable, so that family members can be employed and there'll be an alternative of supervision for them if that's what's needed. And I would like to know, I myself do not know, and I would like to hear, when a director puts in for a position to be advertised, what's that process? Like, it goes on the website and then everybody can apply? So then who weeds out who gets interviews? Who makes that decision? Because everybody, tribal member that applies should have a right to interview. And I would like to know that process of what's in our policy and how that works, in case there's something there we need to revise too. Because we gotta make it an inclusive HR department that takes into consideration who we are. We're related. In many ways, we're related. So I think we need to have that culturally within our HR policy too. Some way to get to, so that all our relatives can get a job. And I don't want to have a tribal member feel so disappointed because they didn't get an interview. So anyway, that's just my own thinking, but I agree. I think there's, at least in that policy, there's room for revision. Myself, I do. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that, Kenny.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on, Louis. Kenny was next.
I agree with you on.
Is your mic on? Is your mic on?
I agree with you in a lot of respects that we're all related in one way or another, whether it's blood, adoption, or whatever, we're related. The line item and when I was listening to Coley, you know, one of the suggestions I had thought of several years ago, it never caught on, was to have what you call a recourse committee to hear the cases of those people that were fired and how serious they are. I think that makes a difference. Some people may think one case more serious than another, but you take maybe 5 or 6 level-headed people to hear a person's termination process. I bet 9 out of 10 times you'll find that it really wasn't all that justifiable. But then again, there should be a recourse when that's the situation. That's what I would recommend if I was in a position to do that.
So, thanks. We do need something else that Louis.
We have situations of housing. We terminated elders who violating their lease when the kids came in and did damage to the house. We didn't have any recourse or anything we could do. I would suggest that we put together a panel that could work with the grandparents and get them into another house. I would go so far as to suggest that they move to the top of the list, the availability list, over some of these cases. Because the grandparents were the innocent victims. That's what troubled me the most. We could look at ways to deal with the grandmother and help her. She's got to learn about the psychology of meth, so she understands their behavior when they're on that drug. And I don't know meth. I'm an alcoholic. I can tell when you've been drinking. I can see you across the street. But we've got to figure out a way to give people that lost their house a chance to get back. We've got to deal with people that Cody's talking about, that may need treatment. They may need somebody to take their hands and show them how to do things. But we've got to approach it with compassion. I've seen enough of what we have been mean to each other. tribe was really mean to me when I came here as chairman. But I soon figured out it wasn't me. I did not let them get to my psyche. Not let them get to who I was as a person. But Winnebagos can be mean. They say things. We tease a lot. The way we tease, we know how to get to each other. But I want to put together a plan that's based on compassion. And I saw that story of the young mother who needs a battery for a car. She can get a job.
We're going to talk about that later in executive session, Louis.
Good comment.
I see issues with families, and we've got to help them. They run out of space in the tennis program. They like to get thrown out. But they got the problems. And we've got to figure out a way to continue to help them. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis, for saying that, and talking about compassion with the homes that sometimes are displaced. We have to have that same level of compassion when they're displaced from their jobs for whatever reason that is. So, looking forward to how we approach that. Eric.
I think the word of the day is nepotism. And if we don't keep a handle on it, it's going to get out of control. And I think we have to rely, well, we're talking about education and places within that parameter. We have 5 schools on our tribe that they don't have to stay in that one place, that they can go to the college. We have the public school. We have the school on the hill, and that little school right behind the Blackhawk Center. And so that's just an option for that. And I think we really need to work and rely on our policy and procedures. We didn't get to this point just overnight against nepotism. It's something that came up in prior councils, prior to us, dealt with that, and they're the ones that made the policies and procedures. And then we got the native versus the non-native in working positions. And we have to keep the organization running. That's the bottom line. And should there be a reason why they come to the council, that their first chance was being hired, and then they have to just prove it and just be that worker that they're putting in for. And I'm not trying to be against any native or any enrolled member, but there's rules, off the reservation. If you're late 3 days in a row, or 5 days, or 8 days in a month, and you're getting fired. That's all there is to it. And on the outside world, off the reservation, they can't run to their relatives that are on the council and request to have that, or have it reviewed, or fight it and take time, and that job needs to be filled to keep the organization running. And so that's the only thing I'm looking at from where I'm sitting right now at this table, is keeping the organization running. And if a job opens up due to someone individual shortcomings, then we must replace that seat as soon as possible and keep it going. So that's just kind of the way I see it. Just we need to rely on our policy and procedures and stick with that. And if there's going to be any change, and we need to have a meeting and a discussion on that, not just have it brought up at the table just to have us talk. That I think next time it comes up, there should be action with it, whether it's for nepotism or against nepotism. But either way, that word's either going to have to stay there and be followed through, or it's going to have to be deleted and let it run rampant throughout our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric, for your comments. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. Some of the issues that have come across the table recently regarding this topic, some of them are on folks that can't get hired. Some of them are folks that feel like they've been treated unfairly, and some of them. So there are solutions to what was shared. It's just there has to be a willingness to invoke those solutions, and I think recently some of them just didn't go that far into the solution bank. But more to talk on that, and the CEO report is probably the better forum when we have Tina and Esther here. So, but thank you for kind of laying out what you want the solution to come to, and hearing Eric, don't break it if it's not fixed. Hearing Coley and some of the others that we need to find some compassion and balance with that policy in favor of our tribal members. So thank you, everybody, for offering those perspectives. That brings us into our executive session items. Item A, they are not finished with their letter, so they would, if they're finished by the time our second item comes, then I suppose we can hear from them. So at this time, looking for a motion to go into executive session.
I move it, Madam Chair.
We have a motion by Kenny. Do we have
Second.
second by Louis.
Madam Chair, I'll be out of the meeting.
Okay. Showing Brian out at 6:54. Yep, and so after this motion passes, we'll take a 5-minute recess to shift the room. I don't think so. We won't. I don't anticipate. Do you anticipate action?
No.
Okay. So we will adjourn from the executive session. So we have a motion to go into executive session by Kenny, seconded by Louis. Any further discussion? Objection to the motion? Motion carried. 600. We are in executive session at 6:54 p.m.
Do I just stay on the line?
They're gonna get you another one. Or stay on? Oh.
Yeah.